Hey there everyone! Welcome to a special playlist on Eador Genesis New Horizons. In this playlist, I'm going to try to teach you guys some of the decisions that I make, or at least what guides my thoughts when I make decisions while playing this game, both in the management of our kingdom and what goes on in my head when doing any of the tactical battles, as well as what makes me decide which battles to do. As a new player to Eador Genesis New Horizons, there is a great deal to learn, and the AI will not hold any punches back from you when you attempt to learn how to play this game. There's not necessarily a steep learning curve, but you can get into a rut very easily and become demoralized. Furthermore, Eador Genesis New Horizons is not a very fair game. The AI cheats. There's no other way to say it. And there's some amount of luck involved in the rewards and events that you can encounter during your time playing this game. The game gives you some tools to deal with this in the forms of stepping into the past. And the quicker you learn what it is that you need to do to make an efficient turn, the better you will begin playing this game. So I'm hoping that to teach you guys how to do all this stuff. Now, before we go any further, you should know that I am by no means an expert at this game. I make bad decisions, sometimes I make misplays. I have used the revert system to go back in time to make better decisions. So keep that in mind as you take any advice that I am going to try to give you guys. I'm not the best at this game. There are people who are far better than me. Next, during this entire playlist, I am not going to be telling you guys to do particular things. Instead, I will be trying to guide you into making better choices. So, I won't be telling you, for example, to always build a certain thing, or always go for certain structures first. I will instead be trying to tell you why you may want to make certain choices over others. But, there are different tactics you can use to win a shard, and you can be victorious with any type of hero or unit combination that you decide to play. It's just a matter of using it well, and if you decide on a certain strategy, to follow that strategy to its conclusion, rather than beginning to try to go off in different directions and weakening yourself. Okay everyone, so I'm thinking to start, we should cover some of the settings which are available to you at the beginning of the game. While these won't make the campaign any easier or difficult, in the form of difficulty, I think it will be easier for you to manage your kingdom and understand what's going on at a glance with some of these settings enabled. So here I am in a single player game, and I've got a few provinces under our belt so far. But notice that we don't have any icons on our provinces with the exception of our flag. We're going to cover all the different settings really quick so I can explain what these things do for you and why you'll probably want to have most of these enabled. First is banners. Clicking banners makes the shield symbol with your symbol on it appear over all the provinces that you own. And when you meet enemies, their shields will be over their provinces. This is useful in case you can't really tell who owns what provinces, because the little flags are just too difficult to see. I have perfect vision, 2010, so I tend not to use it. But for you, you may find it useful, especially if you're finding it difficult to tell which provinces you own, versus which ones are unowned, versus which ones are owned by your enemies, because of how small the flag is normally above these provinces. Next is population mood. This is important when provinces dislike you, and can give you a quick notice as to how much you need to worry about getting their mood happier. Most of the people here in the single player that I'm playing are content or very content, quiet or at least not discontent. The orcs are the only ones that are dangerous, but the symbol of an unhappy face won't show up until they're discontented. The face will have different colors depending upon what the population mood is, and the more unhappy they are, the more quickly the population level will begin to rise. I find it's important to keep track of this, because you'll want to know where you need to put certain spells like extravaganza, or where you need to build pubs and taverns quickly to keep the population under control. unrest, with this clicked, and I don't have anything shown here because nothing is currently no province has a very high unrest rate. There'll be an image of a fire in the province if one of these provinces has a very high unrest rate. That means that it's this mood which they're in is growing very quickly, and generally the angrier the people are, the higher the more unrest they're going to have. This is especially true if you conquer like an Elven Kingdom as an evil astral master. It will go very quick, and you have multiple rebellions on your hand very, very quickly. I find it useful to know when this is happening, so you can keep an eye on the guard strength there, and possibly bring your hero there to quell any rebellions which are occurring. If you don't have that enabled, you might get a rebellion or two which you never realized would happen. With Sentinel enabled, I now have these small shields over my provinces. This is very useful to let me know where I have purchased purchased guards. This way, if I see an enemy here, and I see I have a guard stationed here but not in this location, I would know very quickly that I might want to purchase a guard here to prevent the enemy AI from conquering this province easily without a fight. You can also tell which provinces have guards by seeing the guards in this symbol here, but this very quickly gives you that information. Population limit will show this small red house symbol over any provinces which are currently not increasing their population level due to the exploration level being so limited. You will need to bring a hero over here in order to raise the explored level more and clear the symbol. At that point, the population level will continue growing again. You can tell this information without the symbol by recognizing that the explored is in red, but it is far easier to see where you might need to explore by having this little symbol show up. Quests will show up if you have a quest for a hero. It will show up as to where that quest was given to you as a yellow exclamation mark. You can track the quests by seeing which ones are completed over here, and I believe completed quests will be green in color, with a green exclamation mark rather than the yellow one, letting you know that this hero has completed a quest, and you can go and turn it in when you're ready. I don't think I have any arenas in this province. Arenas are locations where you can go and do a battle over and over again, assuming that you can constantly win. Arenas can give you good treasure, rewards, and experience points for winning those battles. Consider them like a location that you never have to actually worry about being cleared. It's like as if you could go and fight, you could go in here and fight mercenaries, and you can do it several times, actually. And you can pick the difficulty level of the battle that you wish to do. It's useful to know that they exist in case you're looking to level your heroes, but there's nothing in the immediate area that will provide you with a decent challenge. I find shops to be a very important one to have clicked. This little symbol, see this little sun, this little basically wooden shop sign? This appears over any province which has a shop available in it. It doesn't tell you what shop it is, but at least lets you know there is one there. That's very helpful because shops will have powerful spells or very powerful equipment you can purchase. In the case you're running a scout or a warrior, you will want to know that these exist, because they can make your life much easier than trying to find one randomly by clearing locations. Lairs are places where you can go and purchase certain units in them. For example, we have, I guess, a halfling farm here. Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry, no. This is a lair because of the sorcery store. I can actually purchase gargoyles here. Lairs are locations where you're able to walk into them and purchase units from them. A fairy tree, for example, might be a lair, as would a Ratman burrow. Locations where you can constantly go and pick up units. And by units, I mean ones that you don't have to come into the province to purchase. They're not available, let's say, wow, yes, thank you. They're not available here. They're available by you actually entering a location instead. Lairs usually will give you access to units you would not normally have access to, like fairies or sprites, for example, or indeed gargoyles. So it's useful to know that they exist. And finally, temples. These will always be a temple of light. Temples of light you can visit in order to get in order to have your heroes heal their hit points, or your heroes can make offerings to them to improve your karma level. You can also get quests from them. I don't see any temples I have available in any of my provinces. It's a little golden actually there's one right here. See this little, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little itty bitty golden chalice here. That means that there is a temple of light at this location. I generally play with most of these turned on. In fact, everyone generally for me is turned on with the exception of banners. But even that would be useful to know to give you that information at a moment's glance. I recommend that you at least turn on all the information about most of this with the possible exception of the banners, just in case you find them too glaring. But all this information will be very useful and could help you make some decisions as you play the game. Okay, well with that said, let's go ahead and figure out what you should be doing for your first turn on a shard. But before we can actually do the first turn on a shard, we need to determine which shard we want to attack. This will be dependent upon what you think is the most important thing that you need at this moment. If your current buildings are lacking economy structures, maybe you want to build towards getting more of them. If you want more spells of higher tiers or better units, aim for those structures instead. Maybe you're currently content with what you've got, in which case you should look for the rewards that are of different kinds. Astral energy income, for example, or maybe gaining a certain type of item or a unit unlocked to help you with your quest for a shard. What generally decides my actions is what I want to unlock and how far along I am in the campaign. I often will make attempts to gain access to higher tier structures, which is to say, access to tier 2 spells, or tier 3 spells, or tier 2 units, or tier 3 units, depending upon how far I am along in the campaign. The earlier you gain access to these benefits, the more stable your build becomes. You no longer require spending turns farming for a good spell scroll, because you can build a tier 2 spell school instead, which can guarantee you certain select spells for your build. Or tier 2 buildings for units. These give you access to stronger guard contracts, and the units can make or break certain shards in the early game when you have access to them, and the AI does not. As the campaign continues, well, you will find it more difficult to claim shards if you are lacking certain resources. If you begin fighting on large shards, but you haven't unlocked any tier 2 buildings yet, like you haven't unlocked, say, thugs or cavalrymen, you're going to have to struggle a little more than you normally would, or rely on mercenaries in order to hold you to the end of that shard, given how difficult it becomes later on as you continue to beat the larger shards with just tier 1 forces. So I would recommend, especially early on, that you look for one of 3 things. Buildings, like the Sages Guild for example, is required if you want to actually access tier 2 spell schools. The Fort is required if you want to access tier 2 units. The Magic Crystal is a great building to help you with starting quests. They're all decent choices, in this case what Trimus is presented with, and, well, any of these shards I would consider not waste. If this shard, though, had the Fort and the Crystal, I would definitely have chosen to go here first, no matter any of the other rewards. Or if this one had access to the Sages Guild and the Crystal, I would have chosen that as well. Next, when we go after a shard, the very first thing you will be presented with for the very first shard you go after is the difficulty level that you wish to play on. I've mentioned it, I believe, at the beginning of this video series here, that I am not an expert, and I feel that the names of these difficulties best represents the difficulty level. Beginner is not easy. It is beginner difficulty level. After you have played the game for some time, you will probably find it easy, but it's not easy when you're first starting out. These difficulty levels determine several things throughout the campaign. They affect, for the most part, you, and the things you will be fighting. They do not affect the enemy AI overly much, with one exception. First, These choices determine the amount of loot that you will gain after a combat. That is not to say that the amount of treasure that you earn from a location. There are two different things. After a battle, you earn loot, gems, gold, and maybe, if you're really lucky, an item of some sort for doing the battle itself. After that is done, and people have leveled, you will gain the loot that the location held, if it held any at all. Beginner gives you more loot than skilled, and etc., all the way down finally to overlord. I believe after skilled, competent, and lower, you begin getting a loot penalty. Skilled gives you 100% of what the loot would normally be. Competent, it's 90%. These difficulties affect the amount of experience your hero will need to level up. I believe that on expert, it's 100%. Competent, it's 90%, so your hero will level a little faster, and so on for the easier difficulties or the harder ones. These difficulties affect the hit points of the creatures which are guarding locations, greatly reducing them in beginner mode, and going up to what they normally have in expert, to making them extremely difficult to kill in the overlord. They also affect the hit point total of guards that you'll fight. It reduces these hit points less than the enemies that guard locations. To my knowledge, it does not affect the hit points of enemy AI armies that you encounter at all. So don't be surprised if you're playing on beginner and you run into an enemy AI army and suddenly their slingers, instead of having 6 hit points, have 12. Or if you're playing overlord, instead of 6 hit points, they'll have something like 18. So keep that in mind. These levels also affect the amount of starting resources that you gain and the amount of extra income you would gain for picking them. On expert, these levels are no bonuses whatsoever. On competent, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say like you gain an extra 5 gold income and 1 extra gem income. On expert, you would get no extras of either. And of course, this is easier on beginner and harder on overlord. 2 more things. The difficulty level affects how quickly the AI will become tougher to beat. The AI plays at its own difficulty levels, kind of similar to you, but it's the reciprocal. An AI that you see listed as playing on the skill difficulty is actually playing on Lord. And an AI that plays on competent is actually playing on master, and so on and so forth. What you pick here will determine how quickly the AI begins to bump itself up to higher difficulty levels, which in your case means that they will have an easier time taking provinces. They will gain more gold for completing quests and or, not completing quests, but for the loot. Everything that you benefit from, they will begin benefiting from, and they will make it themselves fight on easier and easier difficulty levels as it increases. If you pick competent, this difficulty level changes every 11 astral turns. On expert, it's 10. On skilled, it's 12, and so on. There are a few other things it affects in that regard, but I do not quite understand them after looking at the game files. Finally, the level that you pick here affects your final score at the end of a shard as well. If you don't care about the score whatsoever, well, then pick whatever you want. I myself, when I play this game, I play uncompetent, and I feel this tooltip is accurate. Competent is hard. It is not easy. It is better. I am competent at the game. I am better than beginner and skilled. Expert, I will begin losing a little more often than I like. But by all means, play the difficulty that you like. There is one final thing I should mention. This playlist of mine is going forward with the idea that you are probably playing on expert or below. I cannot guarantee that anything I say will work for master or higher. It probably won't work for overlord. This is because on overlord, you absolutely must pick the best units and spells. At this point, you can't get by with a unit composition that's just about anything. You must do some research, and pick the best things imaginable, given how difficult it is to win any shard whatsoever on Overlord difficulty level. In fact, I cannot do it at all. I cannot take a single shard on Overlord, not even the starting shards. It is incredibly too difficult for me. Alright, well, let's go ahead and zone in to our shard. I'll cut the recording really quick so I can save this part, and then we'll be giving you some tactics and or strategy as to what you should be doing on your first turn. Alright everyone, here we are. It's our first turn on a new shard. And finally we will begin to talk about the tips and tactics that this video series is going to be labeled on your first turn, what this video itself will be titled. So there are several important things we need to consider when we start on a shard. Number one, the hero that we want, and possibly the second hero later on. Number two, what units we will want to adventure with our heroes. Number three, any other earlier structures we may want to consider working towards. And finally, any resources, locations, or anything else unique about our starting situation that could help guide us into making these decisions. Now, you can, obviously, take any hero that you want, and any units that you wish to go with them, and do whatever you want to do on your turns. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if you consider certain situations, I think you will find certain decisions easier to make than others. At the very least, I think it's prudent to examine what you can do efficiently and effectively compared to what you will struggle to accomplish. Let's start by talking about the starting heroes and which ones work on which shards, or at least what I consider when I go and hire my first hero. So the first thing I do is I try to think about all the heroes that I could run on the shard given the situation I find myself in right away. I take a look at my starting fortress province, along with all the provinces that surround it, because odds are I will be conquering all those provinces probably within the first 30 turns if I'm able. Some exceptions would be for centaur lands, elf lands, or other non-human races, but generally you will want to try to conquer all of them. So, let's start. The mage. In order for me to consider a mage as a hero that could hold his own at the start of the game, which is to say the first 40 turns, I will want to see at least 8 gems in income available to me in my starting fortress and the surrounding lands. This does not include building the starting magic crystal structure, although sometimes I'll do it anyway. It's tough if you only have 8, but I would want at least 8 to run a mage. This is because your starting structures, or in particular your altar, your library, and all of these tier 1 spell schools require gems to construct them, and you won't be getting very many gems for your starting battles or locations. You'll be lucky to gain more than, let's say, 8. And during a battle, these spells that the mage is going to cast will be consuming crystals. These same crystals that you use in combat are also used, obviously, to construct these buildings. Some of the more expensive spells require quite a substantial investment of these gems. Raise Zombie is the most expensive one I can think of, coming in at 8 gems to cast it. And the next most expensive one is Summon Imp, coming at 5. The more expensive ones are arguably the most useful, and you will find that the best ones, or, well, the ones you will want to cast more often than not, will be costing you at least 3 or 4 gems to cast. And if you cast every single spell that the mage has available to him during a battle, you're looking at about anywhere from, let's say, 8 to possibly 16 or 20 gems per battle early on. That's quite an investment of gems. So if you don't have a good income of them arriving, or a good gem economy, you will struggle to using a mage efficiently, relying instead on magic sparks and fatigues, which you can do. You can do it, and the battles are capable of being won that way, at least on expert and lower. But it will be tougher than it needs to be. And if you roll into fighting undead with magic sparks, whereas shocks would be a lot more potent. So in this situation, I see 6 gem income at Resolute Point. 1 more internal wood for 7. There's the 8th in stone sides for the halfling village. So 8. So that is enough that I would consider a mage to be feasible to run for Trimus' starting location. We'd also earn another +1 gem for building the magic crystal early on, if we decide to build there. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I will almost always try to build this crystal of power, and you probably would want to consider that as well, giving you 9 gem income. Of course, remember, the crystal of power is 35 gems to construct it, and you also must build the altar first. This is going to be 40 total magic gems to build. That's an investment, so consider that as well. I would also consider a mage if I saw a tailor store or a sorcery store. Although, to be honest, they are mostly for there's something I would consider later on, but they would not draw my attention to starting with the mage. Because again, these items will cost you magic gems. If you can't get your mage successfully through level 8 because you're running out of gems to cast spells, you'll never be able to afford a magic wand. Or an orb. Or heaven forbid, you want to hire gargoyles into your army. Next, a commander. I generally find that commander wants roughly 55 gold in starting income, which is to say that you want that per turn, in order to run his army successfully in the early game. The commander starts with 1 more command slot for an extra unit. He starts with 4. All the other heroes start with 3. In addition, the commander really wants to give medals to all his units when they earn them, depending upon what the medal is. The better the medal, the more expensive it will be. Some even cost magic gems. For this reason, as I mentioned, you want 55 starting gold, and you will probably want at least 7 or 6 magic gems in order to afford the upkeep, if your healers or your shamans can earn a magic medal. Another thing is that as he levels, the commander gains more command slots more than any other hero. So your army becomes expensive to maintain. This is especially true if you do not take any logistics as his upgrades, which can reduce the costs a bit. So let's count up the gold we have available to us. Racing, we have 8 gems. That is very nice for a commander. So I see 16 here, Resolute Point, 23, 28, 34, 48, 56, 68. So there is enough gold that I could consider running a commander. Next, a warrior or a scout. I will usually go warrior or scout first if I see an archery or a weapon store available in my starting province, or if I got lucky enough to see one in the images surrounding our starting lands. The images that you see in your starting locations shows the very bottom location in a province. Now, I see no shops available in Resolute Point, and I was unlucky enough, or rather we did not get lucky enough, to see any starting shops that might be around in these lands. The warrior and scout, just like in some video games like World of Warcraft or other games of that sort, really benefit from a good weapon. They are very item-centric. Their skills can help them hold their own, but a weapon, oh my goodness, it turns them into a monster. And with the weapon store, the warrior could also benefit from a starting shield. The more armor that you have, the more resilient your warrior, and the more damage he will just shrug off and ignore, allowing him to single-handedly decimate entire armies of enemies. In any case, without them here, I do not feel inclined to consider them to start. As we adventure with a wizard or a commander, well, we could go ahead and maybe find some equipment for these units, these heroes instead, and that would make a good choice for a second hero. Now, if we didn't have the money for a commander, and we didn't have the gems for a wizard, then I would probably still select the warrior or scout anyway. This is because they will probably have an easier time, which is to say it'll be tough, but at least they can do it, compared to those other heroes. Something else to consider when hiring your first hero is the terrain that's around you and locations that are in your starting fortress province. The terrain matters because certain heroes, I find, prefer different types of terrain. A scout likes hills and swamps. Hills much more. A warrior wants there to be forests or plains. A wizard would like swamps and probably forests as well. A commander doesn't care. Why is this for all these choices? Hills increase the defense of a unit standing on them, gives it +1 counterattack, and also increases the range of its range attacks by 1. This can really help a starting scout, giving him extra range to hit the enemy before they reach him, since a scout and a wizard generally always want to weaken the enemy before it arrives, and they're forced to engage them in actual melee combat with their army. A warrior can benefit from hills, but they'll slow him down and drain his stamina as he enters them. They also slow him from reaching the enemy lines where he wants to be, up there fighting. So I generally will not pick a warrior if I see a great many starting hills. Forests reduce the damage that your scout will do to any unit in them, and they help your warrior close with enemies. Although it does slow him, it does not, however, reduces his stamina upon entering forests. A commander being in forests will also reduce the range attack damage he takes, and a wizard really wants to be in a forest to stop himself from being shot to death by brigand renegades. Plains are fantastic for a warrior, or maybe a commander's army who he wants to run around and be able to hit who he wants, and engage with the enemy as fast as possible. A scout doesn't really want the enemy closing with him quickly, and a mage definitely does not. So consider this when you look around. Also remember that certain types of terrain have different types of enemies within them. Forests can often be home for giant spiders, as well as mostly giant spiders. Sometimes centaurs, yes, centaurs as well. Hills as well can have centaurs. They'll have kobolds in the mines here, and dark elves as well. Plains will often have brigands and other such things in them, so keep that in mind when you look at the locations that are around you. A warrior, for example, will not like fighting giant spiders whatsoever. A mage or a scout would not mind so much, even in the woods for a scout, because at least they can blink them whenever they find the spiders not in the woods. But a warrior would get webbed, poisoned, and killed. Even a high-level warrior fighting 3 spiders could die very easily, unless you're very careful. Next, speaking of locations actually, consider that there are some locations which can grant you extra income. Generally, if you're not familiar with the game, you should always click on every location and read about it. The writing in this game is rather nice, and I think they've done a fantastic job. But in addition, it will tell you if there's anything special that location will grant you upon completing it. An idol, for example, reduces the province growth by -1. It's effectively a negative granary. If you destroy it, that effect is gone. And it could be present in your province without you knowing it, and you'll have to explore to find that location and destroy it. A demon gate will spawn demons, graveyards will spawn undead, and other such things. There is I forget what it's called now, but it's like a magic portal of some sort, or a gate, and this can give you extra gem income. If you wanted to start with a wizard and only saw 7 gems around, but saw one of those special locations in your starting province, that could make up for the fact that you don't have the gem income by taking these lands. Instead, doing that location could give you the gems that you need. Just be sure it's not guarded by something like giants or a dragon, because in that case, you should probably rule it out as a place you will ever be able to take until the very, very late game. Now, with all that talked about, let's go ahead and hire our hero. So, I've seen that I have enough gems for a mage. I have enough money as well to run a commander. I think Trimus will hire himself a commander. It'll be a little tricky to run, until we take these lands here. They give us the most money. Or the halfling village, which also could give us a bit of gem income. But we'll go ahead and hire him to start. So let's go ahead and do so. Hello, Rulatus. Welcome aboard. Next, when you hire your hero, unless your hero is actually going to be exploring in this location, I highly recommend that you take one of your units, preferably a militiaman, and just stick them right in here. Just leave them inside your starting garrison. This is probably one of the only things I will say that you probably must do or should do, and it will be a big mistake if you do not do it. During the game, provinces can be invaded by neighboring provinces, or random events can occur. Some of these can cause a province to come under attack by an enemy army of some sort. If this happens to your fortress province, and you have no guard to defend it, or if that guard is defeated, and this province would then be laid siege to, if you had nothing in your garrison, you will lose the game at that point, or rather that shard. Instantly taken from you, that's it, you've lost. So leave something in your garrison at all times. You will not even get a chance to step into the past. It is over. You have lost that shard, barring outside save scumming. So keep that in mind. Next, when you hire your hero, I feel this is very important to point out. I should have pointed out before I hired Rudolus. There's a big difference in your hero if you hired him with the Eador Genesis fixed skills executable, or the Eador Genesis just normal executable. Rudolus here, I used him without the New Horizons mod. The New Horizons fixed skills. The commander, because I did not run fixed skills, gains a random skill. In this case, he's gained range tactics, and he started with a second slinger. Normally, the commander will start with a peasant, a slinger, and a spearman. But because he started with range tactics, that really helps out his ranged units, and thus he's gained a second slinger instead. If I started the game with the fixed skills executable, he would always start with the skill that would have granted him, I think it's +1 morale and +5 experience. I will show you. Here I am back again, and I don't have my hero at the moment. Let's go ahead and hire him now with the fixed skills executable instead. We've gained Gavian instead. As you can see, he starts with a militiaman, a slinger, and a spearman, and he starts with leadership, which I consider perhaps the most useless of any of the abilities in the game whatsoever, until it's about level 4. 5% experience is almost unnoticeable in my opinion, and plus morale, you will not even notice this as either during a combat. It could be useful, I suppose, I should correct myself, if you're starting with very low morale units such as thieves, because this will cause them to fight efficiently for a longer period of time without dying. Without running off the battlefield. But generally, if I hire a commander, I almost never want to see leadership show up, especially not for a first skill. So keep that in mind as well when you hire your starting hero. Warriors will start with combat and with fixed skills. This is the one that gives them parry and precise strike. Scouts will start with marksmanship. This gives them +1 extra damage with their range attacks. The wizard will start with thaumaturgy, which gives them +1 resistance and negates 1 point of the enemy's resistance when they cast spells. All of these are very useful for these classes. The only one I do not like for fixed skills is the commander. I think that his needs to be, I would like it to be different. In addition, fixed skills, for some of these heroes at least, guarantees other skills as being available to them when they level up. The scout will always have marksmanship show up when he hits level 1, and always show up when he hits level 3, so you can max it immediately. I think the wizard gets the same thing for thaumaturgy as well, if you just wish to keep upping that. I find with the scout, at least, if I want to hire a scout, New Horizons fixed skills, especially for your first scout, it's very nice, and I highly recommend it. Because the extra damage and the +1 range at max level, that is so useful for your starting scout. It is incredibly useful, rather than relying on random chance giving you that. You can, of course, though, still make it work if he doesn't have it, but I find it's easier to do it with it. Right, now I'll be back because I much prefer the other type of commander. Okay, everyone. So, with our commander hired, and now I have Dagalore with offensive tactics for Trimus, it's time for us to talk about the next very important thing we need to consider. What units should accompany our hero as he sallies forth to begin conquering neighboring provinces and doing locations? This part of the video, also, and I apologize for this, will be probably rather long, and I might go on a few tangents, and I apologize if I do so. It's very tough to describe what units you should hire, because I don't think any one of them, at least on expert and lower, are necessarily better than any others. They all serve different purposes in your army, and I found that I can make them work more or less whatever I decide to pick, with some exceptions. We should talk about the exceptions first. Number 1. In New Horizons, and probably in Eador Genesis, units of opposing alignment dislike each other. They do not get along very well, and the morale will suffer if put together. A lawful unit, such as the swordsman here, will not get along very well with a barbarian, who is unscrupulous. They will suffer morale penalties if put together. They'll probably have, I think, -1 or -2. This becomes more pronounced the greater the difference in alignment. A swordsman will get along even less than a thief, who will get along less with the swordsman as well. This alignment affects the units that you hire if they are opposing, but it also affects you. As you play through the campaign, or even a multiplayer or single-player game, the choices that you begin to make, the events you do, the spells you cast, the buildings you create, the choices I think you even make when talking to other Astral Masters, all of these affect your alignment, or karma, I think is what the game calls it. Evil units do not like working for a good aligned Astral Master, and the same holds for lawful units who do not like working for an evil Astral Master. If you've been watching through my campaign series, you will have seen me at least once try to run an evil army, even though I was a good Astral Master. This was very difficult, given the massive penalties we had. I think I was up to like -3 or -4 morale to my evil army because of just how good I ended up being. In fact, I ended up hiring a gnoll, using him as a mascot, in order to keep these guys in line. You see, if you hire one thief and you're a good aligned Astral Master, he'll probably have like a -4 or -5 to his morale. So you need more evil units present to help reduce that, improve their morale, because this way they begin getting along with each other, and it can kind of counteract the morale penalty that you are giving to your army. Why does morale matter? A unit that has less than 5 morale will begin fighting less efficiently. They will, as you can see, 5 or less units. Oh, 5 or less. All right, so not less than 5. Their attack and counterattack decrease. If it drops to 0, you will lose control of the unit. It will just huddle there in fear, or it may run off the battlefield. Evil units generally have less morale than good aligned units. The Brigand has 8. The Peasant's neutral, and even he has 9. So keep that in mind when going forward. Try to keep your units' alignments the same. There are, however, 2 exceptions to this, or rather 3, I suppose I should point out. Number 1, barbarians do not care about morale. They have 10, the highest of the starting evil units to my recollection, but the moment they take any damage, even if their morale was lower, they gain battle frenzy, or rather if they take significant damage. I think it's like 5 or 5 to 15% of their maximum hit points and damage. So if he takes, let's say, 3 damage, he becomes enraged. And then he ignores any morale penalties he might have had, and his morale becomes 10. A healer does also not technically care about morale. Though they might run off the battlefield, you don't ever want your healer attacking or counterattacking. They're here just to heal. This means that you can have an evil group and hire a healer, I suppose, but keep in mind that healers are good, and so they will lower the morale of your thieves, brigands, and shamans if you venture with them. However, healers and barbarians could technically get along. The barbarians, after taking damage, won't care that healers are here, and the healers healing the barbarians won't be attacking. That's up to the barbarians to do. Finally, if you have any undead suffer no morale penalties whatsoever, and do not care what their army consists of. This could also work for you if you are playing a lawful or a good aligned Astral Master. Although raising undead is an evil act, the undead don't care whatsoever about the alignment of your Astral Lord. So you can still run around with an undead army, and you can still work as a good aligned Astral Master. But you will not be able to do that so effectively if you're evil, and try running around with the Alkari, for example. That will just never work. Right, so, with morale covered, and how you probably should not be mixing and matching good and evil units in your armies, with a few exceptions, you will probably want to plan all the units that you will want to hire from the very first turn of the game. This is important because as you venture forward, certain units build into other types of special structures. For example, the peasants can give you access to the barracks, and the barracks can give you access to the light infantry. The barracks itself increases your experience by 20, and the light infantry is a pretty decent guard. It also gives you access to the cavalry barracks, which can give you access to the jousting arena. Terry barracks, which can give you the cavalry guard, which is a decent guard as well. But you'd have to build both the recruiting station and the spearman school to access that. If you started with the spearmen and then later on you just decided, well, I think I'll build slingers, healers, and swordsmen, you would not be able to access that guard contract and would lose access to the recruiting station and the cavalry contract later on. So keep that in mind when building your buildings. Try to plan them all out at the start. Next, you can delay this somewhat if you at least hire the neutral units. One of these hired neutral units. Build a neutral units building first. They don't care about adventuring with evils or goods. So you can start with the spearman school, for example, and delay your mind if you want to build the swordsman school, or maybe build one of these structures for the barbarians, brigands, etc. later on. I often will start with a neutral building, most of the time with the spearman school, just because that lets me delay what I have to build until later on. But by all means, you do not have to do so. Alright, now, let's try talking about each individual unit for a bit. All the tier 1s, at least. I will give you my thoughts on them, and what makes it appealing to build that structure to give you access to that unit or other benefits. I'm going to put a cut here really quick, though. Okay, let's do this. The recruiting station. This gives you access to peasants, probably the weakest unit in the entire game. The benefit of militiamen, or peasants, is that they're extremely cheap. Only 10 gold to hire them, and 2 gold for upkeep. The peasants themselves can upgrade themselves into any of the other tier 1 units that you see available. At least I believe they can. As they level up, they get a chance to take skills similar to everyone else, which is to say that they'll get a choice between 2 different skills. But sometimes, one of those things might be to become an upgraded spearman, or a barbarian, or a thief, or maybe a bowman. So if you start with the militiamen, and you can keep them alive a little bit, then you'll be able to take a different type of unit, maybe one that you didn't even build a building for. I believe that if you level them high enough, they can become I think they're called workers, and these units are able to repair your siege equipment. I think they have to reach level 22 to get that option, though. Militiamen themselves, while not very effective in combat, can make a decent tar pit. If you're playing a necromancer, or an evil wizard who has necromantic powers, then you can use their corpses to raise skeletons or summon ghosts, able to create powerful undead from their very flimsy leftover bones, their remains. And that can be very, very powerful. So if you want to do that, they're cheap, easily expendable, easily replaceable if necessary, and you don't care about them one single bit. The militiamen also give you access to the barracks. The barracks increases your recruit's experience by 20, which is useful. That's, I think, a level for some of these units when you hire them. It also allows you to build the light infantry guard, if you also build the spearman school. The light infantry guard I consider to be a good tier 1 guard contract. One of the better ones, I think. Finally, something to consider, militiamen and the recruiting station require no special resources in order to hire them. Swordsmen, for example, require 2 pieces of iron. If you have no iron available in your surrounding lands, as we do not, for example, then hiring swordsmen is very, very expensive. Every iron that you do not possess will increase the cost by 15 gold each. This means that our swordsmen are not going to be 40 gold. They're going to be... Actually, how expensive are they? One second. Let's level back and check. So instead of 45 gold, they're going to... Oh, it requires 1 iron to hire them. They will be 60 gold to hire them. And that price will keep going up until you're actually able to secure the iron resource. Peasants require no such things, and the recruiting station is also very cheap. Next, slingers. Slingers are probably the weakest range unit in the game, but they're cheap. 4 gold maintenance. And 20 bucks to hire them, they're not so expensive. They also level up quickly. At level 13, they can become a advanced slinger? Is that what the unit's called? Let's see really quick. I can't tell. Right, yes, but they can level up at level 13, and then become veteran spearmen. Veteran slingers is what they are. The chief benefits of the slingers themselves is the fact that they never run out of ammo on the battlefield. They get a special ability called Collect Ammo that lets them pick up ammo off the battlefield, and they can keep on slinging. Now, they'll run out of stamina, but slingers have a few upgrades that the other range units do not have. They gain recuperation, allowing them to recover stamina faster. They also can gain a skill called Stunning Shot, which, if it does damage to the enemy, also reduces its stamina. That is very, very powerful. I think in one of my videos, my warrior almost dies to slingers because they drain so much of his stamina that he can't effectively defend himself from anything. If you can get them high enough, and you can give them enough Stunning Shot, you will be able to cripple even high-level enemy heroes as long as you can get past their armor somewhat. Slingers are also fast, able to move 2 spaces. Or not fast, but average movement, I suppose. Finally, they give you access to the Watchtower, a guard contract. Arguably, having a guard contract is better than not having one. The Watchman Guard themselves are not very strong, but they'll repulse probably a level 5 hero who's attacking early on. More importantly, though, the Watchtower gives you +1 to the attack of your stronghold's towers. I think, but don't quote me on this, I believe what that means is that the rate of morale that gets dropped on the enemy army when they attack is increased. Next, the Watchman Guard, which I was talking about briefly, is, while not very strong, does increase the spawning range by 1 extra province. That is actually very, very useful if you don't know where to go or you're desperate to find resources. For example, if we built it here, we'd actually see another ring of provinces around our current province. And the Watchman Guard is not that expensive to build. I believe it's 80 bucks? 70 bucks to hire, to purchase it, and 5 bucks maintenance. Next, Spearmen. You will often see me take Spearmen. This is because Spearmen are decent. They're one of the cheapest units in the game that you can actually, probably, well, one of the cheapest, that has armor, 2 points. So they can take a hit, just not more than probably one good hit before they drop. You can actually level them as well if you can keep them alive. Level 16 is achievable on your early starting shards. They have 2 movement, and they have a single decently damaged spear at 6 damage at range 2. This can be surprising to you, probably, if you're fighting them, when they advance forward and hit your units behind your lines and you didn't think they could do that. They have a decent counterattack, and I often try to use this rather than have them attack flat out. Generally, I'll move them up into position and then throw a spear. At $25 to hire and $5 maintenance, they're not that bad either. And they have heavy ammo, reducing the ranged defense of a unit that they strike with their spears. This can help a scout out in particular, because they will weaken the enemy's ranged defense, and then your scout can pick them off. It can also help your slingers if you have these guys adventuring with your slingers as well. What else do they get? They upgrade to veteran spearmen, who begin with, I think, 1 extra ammo and a little bit more attack or counterattack. So they're decent. I really like spearmen, and I can keep them alive more often than not thanks to their decent speed of 2. You'll need the spearman school as well if you want access to the barracks. We've covered this from the militiamen already. And finally, of course, this gives you access to the cavalry barracks if you build the jousting arena later on. The shooting ground gives you access to bowmen. Bowmen are a very nice tier 1 ranged unit. And of course, if you don't gain access to lizardmen archers or elven archers, these guys can really do decent damage at good range. At 5 range, they exceed the range of your slingers, who only has 4, and they also have 2 movement. Requiring level 17 to level up, they probably can, and they'll become rangers. Bowmen are useful because they ignore 1 point of the enemy's range defense as well. They're expensive to hire, $50, and with 10 gold maintenance. They also require 1 redwood to hire, or they're going to be even more expensive. I generally don't start with them, given the high cost of the shooting ground, their high maintenance cost, and their purchase cost is also increased, but they can be very useful even if you start out with them. They give you access to the bowman as a guard contract. Not very strong, and it will almost always die to an enemy attack, but you can probably pick off 1, maybe 2 of the enemy units in the army that are attacking you first. They also require no gold upkeep whatsoever, though, and 50 to hire, making them probably one of the cheaper guard contracts in the game. Oh, as you can see, the cost of garrison units reduced by 50%. It says local garrison here, so I think if you built a garrison in the province and then put hunters guarding it, and by garrison I mean like a fort, like one of these, then that would reduce the cost of any other units you station there. Their upgrades as well are very decent. They gain access to I think slingers might be able to as well, but they'll gain access to double shot, which can be a very nasty surprise, although very heavily stamina draining. And they gain access to things like the extra +2 range attack damage and +1 range, I think. So they can gain some very nice medals when leveling up. The swordsmen. First off, remember that these guys are good aligned, or rather, they have positive karma, so you will probably not want these if you're playing an evil Astral Lord or want to hire evil units. Swordsmen, at level 19, you probably will not be leveling them up into their upgraded unit, the Ironclads, until you're fighting on larger shards than average. I have, I think, only once been able to level a swordsman to an Ironclad on an average shard, and that was one in which I had to delay rather long in order to siege a location because of the guards that were in it. So keep that in mind. They're probably going to remain as a swordsman. But these guys are very nice. With parry 3, as long as you can keep them to 1 single attack from an enemy on 1 round, they will take significantly decreased damage and can hold the front line very well. For upgrades, they can gain something called Shield Bash, which lets you drain the enemy of its stamina. I have managed to beat level 28 and higher heroes with the Tier 1 Guard's Guard contract, thanks to shield-bashing swordsmen and ironclads. Once an enemy is drained of stamina, it will struggle to kill 3 or 4 units that are surrounding it, and you can annihilate it at your leisure. The unit itself, though, is expensive at 45 bucks to hire and 9 maintenance. They are not cheap, and they require 1 iron which contributes to their purchase cost. If you go with swordsmen as your first starting unit, you will probably barely have enough money left over to continue to build structures. If you hire 2 of these guys and march out there with a slinger, let alone 3 of them, you better be able to keep these guys alive. Losing a single one can be crippling to your starting economy. They build as well the Lookout Tower, which increases the attack of your stronghold towers by 2. I believe, once again, that lowers the enemy's morale when you're attacked, and it lets you hire the Guard's Guard. I view the Guard's Guard as perhaps one of the strongest Tier 1 Guard contracts around. I have wiped out high-level commanders with like 13 units with the Guard's Guard. It is tough to do, and I can't do it all the time, but I have done it. It is an amazing guard. It is expensive, though, at 120 to purchase normally, and of course you'll want 2 iron you'll want iron and redwood, or this will be even more expensive. And 8 maintenance isn't that bad. Finally, it has the extra benefit that it reduces the unrest growth rate by 3, reducing the time that the province will rebel against you, should you place this in something that, well, hates you, your armies, or your astral master. Oh, to build the Guard's Guard, by the way, will also require you to have the Crossbowmen School built. So if you decide you want them, heavily consider also reserving one of your other Tier 1 units for the Crossbowmen. This way you can gain access to the Guard's Guard. You don't have to, but it's very useful to do. Next, Pikemen. Pikemen are an interesting unit to hire. They're expensive maintenance, and they're not that much cheaper than the swordsmen, and of course they also require 1 iron. But they get to attack the enemy before the enemy attacks them, so they will always be using their counterattack. Their normal attack, though, is rather low, at only 5. That's the exact same attack strength as the peasant. Even the light spearmen have a better attack than that, as do brigands and thieves, so keep that in mind. But they will, at least, if they are attacked, deal 9 damage first, well, minus enemy's defense, before they are attacked. They also have 4 melee defense, which is very nice, so they can take a hit or 2, and 3 ranged. The swordsman, by the way, had I think 5 ranged? Yeah, 5 ranged, very nice. By the way, don't let this fool you. Dark elves can tear apart swordsmen, so keep that in mind. I hate Dark Elf. I hate those girls. Anyway, right, back to these guys. Because they attack first, the AI, and this is especially true when you have a warrior, will often target your warrior instead of the pikemen. Normally, the AI will not do this. Often, you kind of want this to happen, because you want the damage spread to your warrior who can take a few hits. But sometimes, this is a nightmare, as you struggle to keep your warrior alive, while your pikemen desperately try to defend him by getting in front. Pikemen also have first aid in New Horizons. This is actually really, I'd say broken, but it's mostly funny. An AI-used unit that it will die upon hitting your pikemen's spears will often not even bother to attack. You can abuse this and just not do anything with your pikemen, and the AI will simply not be able to attack or won't attack. So they can heal themselves up to full, depending upon how many turns have elapsed in the combat. The Pikeman School also builds into the Warriors Guild. The Warriors Guild gives you 20 experience points upon building it and gives you access to the Patrolman Guard. Extra 20 experience is very nice, and it gives you access to the Officers Academy. Later on, this increases your experience by 30, and allows hiring the Guardsman's Guard. Keep in mind, though, that you'll also have to build the Guardsmen as a Tier 2 unit if you want access to that building. That's something else I should quickly stop and talk about, is that some of these units give you access to a guard contract just by building its building alone. The patrolmen's, is that what this is called again? Yes, the patrolman guard, you get that for just building pikemen. The bowmen, you get hunters, you get that by just building the shooting ground. So keep that in mind. If you're desperate for a contract and you don't want to stick with recruits, and you don't really rely on the limited amount of hero contracts you'll have, maybe consider building a pikeman school to gain access to at least a patrolman guard, even if your other units are, let's say, spearmen, slingers, and the Brotherhood of Light, or bowmen, or whatever, what have you. Next, the Brotherhood of Light. This gives you access to healers. Healers are very, very useful. They run around and obviously they heal your units. This can be especially useful to keep your army at tip-top fighting shape. We haven't covered combat, and we'll do that in the next video. But the objective, which I'll mention then as well, in every battle is to annihilate all the enemies and keep your army intact. You don't want to lose a single unit. You don't want to take any damage. You want to kill all of the enemy units and end the battle completely with 100% life and perfectly fine. Healers help you greatly with that. The AI hates healers, though. It will go after your healers whenever it is able to do so. I do not recommend that you take your healers with you when you fight certain types of enemies. If you go against, let's say, centaurs, they will definitely kill all of your healers, unless you're fighting in a swamp, and even then you'll probably lose them. I highly recommend that you do not take your healers with you, leave them in your garrison, and take new healers who will not be as leveled, or etc. with you. Please don't take healers. And I completely skipped the crossbowmen school. We'll go back to them. When they level up, they'll get the options to, like, take meditation, which I highly recommend that you select because it lets them rest, and when they do so, they'll recover 1 ammo. Their medals can increase their healing as well, and is very useful, but will cost gems as their upkeep, so keep that in mind. And speaking of upkeep, healers require 1 gem upkeep. If you're on a gem-starved start, you will probably not be able to hire healers in your army. Not that you need them, but they can be very useful. Healers also give you access to the Abbey, which lets you hire the Brotherhood of Light Guard. The Brotherhood of Light is not very strong, and will probably melt to any type of enemy attack at all. Even like a level 4 hero can probably defeat the Brotherhood of Light very easily. But the Brotherhood of Light is not hired to defend the province from enemies. It's hired because it improves the population mood in the capital by 1. And the province is stationed in by 1. Oh, no, that's the Abbey. I'm talking about the Brotherhood of Light Guard contract, not the Abbey itself. So this guard contract increases the population mood by +1, making it happier. And it also lets units heal faster if placed in it. If you also build a church later on, and I think you build a monastery, you can gain access to another guard contract. I might be... Yes. So if you had the Brotherhood of Light, and you build the Tier 2 monks, you will gain access to the Eagle Brotherhood. This is not a very strong Tier 2 guard contract. I would also probably consider it not as strong as the Guards Guard or Light Infantry, but it's a little stronger, and it has the same effect as the Brotherhood of Light. So keep that in mind. Again, if you go with these healers as a Tier 1 unit, you might want to consider building the monks as Tier 2 if you want access to the Eagle Brotherhood. Next, the Crossbowmen School. Crossbowmen are an interesting ranged unit. I struggle to use them effectively, but that's mostly a problem on my part. First, they do decent damage, the same as your bowmen do, and they get the same types of upgrades. But their range is 1 less, at 4. Unlike slingers, they also only have 1 movement, so they can't move and shoot unless you give them a spell like haste or something of the sort. This means that they generally have to get into position, and they'll give up a turn of shooting to do so. Your starting placement with the crossbowmen really matters if you want them to fire without having to move first. Despite their shortcomings, they have armor-piercing shot, and later on, with some upgrades, they can actually even damage skeletons, amazingly enough. They can also shred apart enemies that get within their nice concave if you hire a lot of them, if you're able to bring all their crossbows to bear against a decently armored enemy. But they're expensive. At $55 to hire and 11 maintenance, they are, I think, the most expensive Tier 1 unit you can purchase that you start with, or rather have easy access to early on. They also have armor, with 3 melee and 2 ranged armor. That's better than the others. I think the bowman might have 1 ranged. No defenses on the bowman. I don't think there's any on the slinger. And nothing on the slinger. If a bowman gets shot, he's probably almost dead. He might have 1 or 3 hit points left, for example. Same thing with a slinger. But your crossbowmen, they can take a hit. Not very many, but they can take 1. They also can defend themselves in combat if the enemy reaches them. And when they run out of ammo, they can fight just as effectively, if not a little better, thanks to their armors, than a peasant. So that I think makes them worth the price. They upgrade, by the way. I don't know if I talked about the upgrades for these guys. I don't think I did. They upgrade into snipers. Snipers have even more damage, I think. Yes, I think they have even more damage and get special upgrades, but I've never actually leveled a crossbowman to a sniper. This is because they require level 18, and I just don't have the time to do that on a average-sized shard. Your pikemen, by the way, level up into sentinels. Sentinels generally have first strike, which they have, and also generally have agility and vigilance, which lets them attack without provoking a counterattack, which might be good sometimes. And also lets them strike enemies that have agility. I think they get that by default, but I'm not 100% sure. Your swordsmen will upgrade into ironclads. Stronger, and well, they do a little more damage. I think they have better defenses as well. And your healers will upgrade into grand healers. I have never been able to do this. There's not enough time on a shard to level these guys up to level 21. They don't kill anything, so they don't get any extra experience by attacking, by being the last thing to hit a unit, for example. But the grand healers, if you can get them, they have greater healing range than just one adjacent. So they are very nice. Keep them alive if you ever can get a grand healer in your army. And I didn't mention it, but these guys also cost Mandrake Root to hire, so they'll be more expensive gem and gold cost-wise, until you can actually secure that resource. Next, the evil units. I haven't used these guys very often, but I can probably give you some advice based on what I've seen others use them, and I have used them a little bit. Everyone loves barbarians. Everyone on the internet recommends barbarians. But to use barbarians effectively, you will need to, well, at least the way I view them, and New Horizons probably, you have to be somewhat aggressive with them. You definitely don't want them taking multiple hits on a round or they'll die. They don't have, although they have 20 hit points, they don't have much armor. They can probably take 2 hits and then you better be able to somehow keep that guy alive so you can take advantage of the fact that he's enraged and will do more damage. They do 9 damage, which is an impressive amount, and only requiring level 15 to level up, you can probably get Berserkers at some point in your army, and Berserkers are terrifying to have to fight. At $30 to hire them and $6 maintenance, they're not so bad either, and they don't require any special resources. Be careful when you use them. Often, I will accidentally throw their ranged attack when I want them to move up and attack. Hold Control and left-click on a unit to make him move up and attack that unit if you're worried that he'll throw his axe at them. But these guys are very decent, and I've mentioned before, once they take damage, you don't care about morale penalties, so you can fit them into armies that you might otherwise struggle with if you're a good aligned or even an evil aligned Astral Master who is considering taking healers with them as well. They give you access to the Chieftain's Hut, which lets you hire the Tribe Guard. The Tribe Guard is pretty decent. I think you get 1 Berserker, 1 Witch Doctor, and a handful of Berserkers, and maybe like 1 extra Shaman. It's decent. I don't view it as strong as the Guard's Guard. It's probably on the same level as the light infantry guard, if not a slightly worse. But it's not that expensive to hire at $100 and 5 gold upkeep. The Den of Thieves. Thankfully, these require only level 9 in order to upgrade them into, I think it's cutthroats. But they're very fragile. They have almost no armor. They can't take range attacks very well. They have dodge, which means that if the enemy focuses on them with range damage, they get some more defense. But generally, 2 big ranged attacks will still down a thief rather easily. Even a single one will do so. They have agility though, which makes them amazing for attacking enemies without provoking a counterattack. This is especially true for fighting, like, let's say, enemy undead, which after taking a big hit, still hit back with their full strength since they ignore combat wounds. They have parry, so their only 1 melee defense is kind of deceptive. They're also very cheap, at $15 to hire and 3 gold maintenance, but they will take away a portion of your loot. Loot being the money you earn from the combat itself, not from what you get from the location. So keep that in mind. You're going to earn less. They make up for their low cost by taking it from the battle afterwards. They can get upgrades though, which allow them to allow you to reduce this somewhat. They also have backstab. Backstab, if you can get a unit on the adjacent hex to the unit they're fighting, like let's say this is the thief, this is the unit you're fighting, and you have another unit here, this thief would get extra damage against this enemy, attacking it from the back, even if it's in the front. It's tricky to do, but it's possible that they can do this. They also have a decent range attack, 5 range, and they have 3 ammo for it. So, it's not so bad, these guys. But again, they can't take a punch. They're low morale, also, you want to be really careful when you use them. They give you access to the Thieves Guild. Very cheap. It doesn't do anything for your income, but it will lower the enemies by 10. It also lets you hire the Thieves Guard. People won't be very happy with this, but it's free, and practically free to purchase it. However, you'll lose income in the province by 10%, and I also think there'll be a few random events which occur based on the fact that you hired this guard. Oh, later on, it gives you access to the Shadow Guild. I think this gives you access, yes, to secret agents, which are a pretty decent guard as well. Next, Brigands. Brigands also will level rather quickly, only requiring level 12 to level them up. They're pretty good, with 8 attack and 5 counterattack, decent hit points as well, and they have some defenses, and they're very, very cheap to hire. Actually, it looks like they're even a little cheaper and to maintain and higher than the thieves were. However, they also take your spoils after battle, and they also reduce the amount of income your province gets when you hire them. If you hire 4 of these guards, your province that has these guards in it will receive 40% less income. So keep that in mind. Although they're cheap, they're taking it out on your income in different ways. This is a deceptive 2. Odds are this is going to be more like 3 to 5 or even more, depending upon how many of these guys you hire and how much money's in your province. They give you access to the Bandit Slayer, which gives you plus 10 income, but also lowers the population mood in the capital by 1. You can get access to the Cutthroats Guard, which is okay. This is probably just about as strong as the light infantry, if not, again, a little weaker. The Cutthroats Guard consists of, I think, 1 gang leader, a host of brigands, and I think 3 renegades are with it as well. Keep in mind that although it's very cheap to purchase this guard, the people won't like it, and the province's income is reduced as well. Finally, we have access to the Shaman. At level 18, you will probably not be able to level them into a Witch Doctor on average size shards, but you might be able to. They're the same costs, just about, as the... Well, they're more expensive to hire, I think, than a healer. Oh, no. Well, they are in gems, but not in gold. Shamans don't heal your army, though. They have a different type of healing. They curse enemies, reducing, as you can see, the target's attacks. It doesn't say by how much, but it's by 2. So that's a way to keep your units from taking less damage, by cursing them. This can be really effective depending upon the other units that you've hired, for example. They also, if you want a ranged attack that's magical, this is the only tier 1 unit you're going to have access to at the early start of the game that does so, with a magic shot and 6 range damage. That can be devastating to starting enemies as well. Goblins, for example, I think they have 3 range defense, but I think only 1 or 2 resistance, so they can do more damage to them. And they can damage and kill skeletons as well, and other units that your ranged units will struggle to kill. Keep in mind as well that they cost a magic root to hire them. They also give you access to the Chieftain's Tent, which is, again, we talked about that briefly, it's a decent guard. And the Black Tower. This gives you access to, I think, yes, the Dark Brotherhood. Now, I have heard the internet say that the Dark Brotherhood is amazing for a tier 2 defensive contract. But I have not ever constructed it, and I have not hired it, so I cannot throw my own opinion into it. However, this Black Tower will give you access to a single Dark Tower structure, and that gives you extra gems. The Eagle Brotherhood also gave you access to a secret monastery, which also gives you gems. And I think it improves the population growth, population mood, while Dark Tower lowers it, but also gives you extra scouting range. So there's more benefit to that as well. Okay, everyone, and I think I've covered all the tier 1 units. When I come back, we'll talk about what you should do with your first hero. Give me a few seconds. Oh, before we can actually talk about what your hero should start doing, we should talk about, well, first, anything else that could persuade you to build a certain type of unit. You notice I was talking about costs and iron and redwood when I was going over some of the units there. The evil units require no special resources with the exception of the shaman to purchase them. The good aligned units really want iron. The crossbowman wants redwood, and the bowman really wants redwood. Remember again that for every resource you don't possess, which is to say, if you don't possess redwood, then every redwood you need will cost an extra 10 gold. And every time I believe you purchase this, it goes up 1 gold and or 1 gem in cost. So, for Dagalore here, let's think about what he would want to hire. Well, he himself, as a commander, has offensive tactics, level 1, increasing the attack of his army. Slingers won't benefit from this, but militiamen and spearmen can, as can thieves or swordsmen. But since I don't see iron around here, and there's no guarantee we'll find it down here, we'll go ahead and begin working toward the spearman school. I have not yet made up my mind if I want Trimus to hire evil units. Now the spearman school requires us to build a workshop first, and I should stop here and point this out. Certain heroes and certain karma levels naturally lend themselves into building certain buildings first. If you build a scout, it can be or hire a scout as your starting hero, it can be beneficial to build the workshop to start. This is because you will gain access to a leather jacket, which gives your scout 1 defense and, in particular, 1 range defense. It may not seem like much, but this can be extraordinarily helpful against starting enemy slingers, for example, who can't ignore that point of range defense. If you start with a warrior, you will probably, in fact, I highly recommend you build a forge, because this gives him access to a buckler and simple chainmail. The commander, our commander, would also want a marshal's baton to give +1 attack to the whole party. So keep that in mind as well for your starting hero. Now, I want Spearman School for our starting hero as a unit to adventure with him. We could go for Swordsman, but if I build Swordsman, well, I don't see any iron around here, so I better be able to keep those Swordsmen alive. But if I stop to think about it now, we could also benefit from the forge for a simple chainmail and a marshal's baton, and this builds into these units. Let's do it. So let's go ahead and purchase a forge. The next thing I'll do is I will immediately purchase equipment for our hero based on what I just built. We'll give him some simple chainmail. Give him a buckler. Oh, that was a mistake. I should have picked up the baton instead. That is a very expensive $32 mistake. In fact, it's too late. Let's go ahead and purchase a short sword for him. I really want the baton. So that was an extra 33 gold wasted. Okay. Oh, I hope I have enough money to do what I need to do now. Alright, so next. Actually, since I made that big giant mistake right there, I will now not hire swordsmen. Instead, we'll have to wait another turn, and we'll hire the spearmen instead. In any case, let's talk about what our hero should be doing on his turn. See, not an expert, by the way. Not an expert. If I make a mistake like that, holy crap. That's a do-over. Like, you will want to restart. You'll want to into the past. 33 gold on the first turn, spent on something you're not going to use. Big, big mistake. That can almost cost you the shard. And I'm not even joking. That's an extra unit if you lose one. That's a building that you could have started with that you're not going to have now. Huge error. Massive, massive error. Alright. Next. Until my hero, or rather, until your hero has a full army, he will be a little weaker than he would otherwise be. Dagler has some armor. He can take a hit. He can probably dish out a hit too if it comes down to it. But with just a spearman and a slinger, he's not probably going to win most of the battles that he finds himself in. Actually, we'll give you the buckler. Maybe we'll end up using that after all. In any case, until I have a full army, I do not like exploring, and I don't want to attack any other provinces that are around me. You can explore, but, because, I mean, you're not doing a fight necessarily, but there is a chance that you will have a random encounter against something which forces your hero into a combat, or presents you with an option for a combat that could be an easy combat. And if you don't have a full army, a level 0 hero will struggle to win those fights. In particular, there's a battle against a group of wolves, and a battle against a group of brigands. The wolves are optional, but the brigands will attack your commander, and probably kill him if you failed to purchase equipment for your hero, in this case, the starting chainmail, for example, and a short sword, and you failed to have a full army on your hero. So I do not like exploring if I can avoid it. Thankfully, there are several things we can do to still make use of our hero on the first turn. If there is a shop available in your starting province, even if it's not one you care about very much, like a knowledge store, let's say, or a sorcery store, you can still go in to that starting shop. The shop might give you a quest, and you can check out the goods that are there. You will want to know what's there so you can have an idea of how much money you will want to save up for if you're interested in any of those items. And the quest can give you access to a decent enough item should you complete the quest later on. Alternatively, in our case for example, Dagalore does not have a starting shop, but there is halflings nearby. We can go there and get a quest from them to form an alliance with the halflings. Even if you don't intend on getting the halflings as an ally, it's useful to do anyway, because you can investigate how strong the province guard is, and get the quest just in case you do decide to ally with them. In the case of halflings, they'll want you to kill 12 brigands. Now, I don't play an evil Astromaster very often. However, if we were an evil Astromaster, the halflings would probably not agree to ally with us at all. In that case, we would want to find an evil group we could ally with, or a more neutral group, such as lizardmen or goblins, for example, are evil. Ratmen are neutral. I believe the goblins want you to kill elves, and I think it's like 7 or 6 elves you have to kill. So keep that in mind if you decide to ally with them. Keep in mind as well that if you are a good aligned Astromaster and you walk into a goblin land to gain the alliance with them, that they will fight you unless you pay 100 gold. and you might not be able to get away from them. Orcs are the same way. They will actually fight you, and if you can't run away, you will lose your commander. So keep this in mind when trying to go and get a starting quest from an alliance you see around you. Also keep in mind about the realities of completing that quest. In our case, the amount of brigands we have available in our starting provinces is almost none. I see rebels here, and that's it. There are, however, brigand outlaws here, so that would give us probably a total of 4 brigands out of the 12 completed. But I don't see a whole lot of any others lying around. We'll have to get lucky and hope that there are some brigands in these locations as we begin to take them. Okay. 1 or 2 more things, and then we'll hit end turn, and we'll take the first turn for the other players in this multiplayer game I started. I mentioned that certain buildings build into other units, and if I had not actually purchased that buckler by accident, I probably would have purchased either the pikeman school or swordsman school and tried to use them in my army. If we were a scout and we built a workshop, that would unlock the spearman school and bowman, and I'd probably go with spearmen to start us out with a scout. If we started with the evil units, the tavern is required to unlock these. The tavern is a very nice starting structure because it gives you extra income. It also lets you begin building toward the Crystal of Power, which requires both the tavern and the altar. The Crystal of Power is a very nice starting structure, but we'll talk about maybe things you should consider building early on in a different video. Still, just know that if you are not sure if you're an evil astromaster, if you should start with spearmen or barbarians, building the tavern is probably the better choice because the starting income gets you closer to Crystal Power and will let you hire these units right away. Unless you're starting with a scout, in which case maybe the workshop is what you want at first just to access the leather armor. And then build spearmen next turn. It all depends upon your strategy. Alright, so with that lore done, let's go ahead and begin applying what we've talked about to the other players in this multiplayer game. Baron Talus. Welcome, sir. Okay, so he's quite a bit different. Let's begin by counting up the magic gems I have available to me. 4 here. Wow, 8, 9, 9. The trouble with seeing the Lizardmen lands have +4 is that this will probably be guarded by a slightly stronger tier 1 or a group that has a tier 2 unit, a Bog Warrior in it. This probably will not be takeable early on. What do I have for starting locations? Nothing that can give me gems. There is no shop in my starting province. I see no shops in the surrounding lands. A wizard is possible, but I'd have to make it a priority to take these lands somehow very early on. I have to make do with just, was it 5? Ugh. 5 starting gems. That would mean delaying the magic crystal for a little bit until I can get strong enough to take on the Lizardmen. Interesting. How about money? 22, 29, 40, 41, 44, 50, 53. Just barely not enough to run a commander. I could do it, but it would be tough. We have hills and forests and a swamp. I think... this is a tough choice. I do see redwood, and I also see marble here. The marble is not something I want to see so early on. This is a tier 2 resource, but the redwood is good to see. That at least it's here. It's probably not guarded by anything too tough. So I'm thinking we probably should start with a warrior or a scout. We could make a commander work here too. but I think one of them is probably better. And if I want the Lizardmen lands, the question would be, do I want an alliance with them, or do I want to fight? In either case, a scout would be good. The Lizardmen's alliance quest requires you killing 6 slugs. A warrior will have a tougher time killing them than a scout will. So I think I'm leaning toward a starting scout. Let's go ahead and hire him to start. We have forests, swamps, and hills around us. So when it comes to this type of choice, keep in mind that when he levels, the starting scout will be able to take forest knowledge first if he takes any types of the terrain knowledge upgrades. I'm also playing this without the fixed skills, so our starting scout here might not start with marksmanship. I just realized that. I should have switched to new, fixed skills. Well, it's too late. So I'm thinking we will take hills knowledge. Although there's more forests here, 1 point in terrain knowledge will get forest knowledge for him and the whole army. Hills knowledge it is. Alright, Ilfin. Next, let's go ahead and purchase the workshop. I don't see any iron around us here at the moment, and I want Ilfin to gain some of that light armor. He also started with looting, so he's not going to do the most damage in the world, just 6. It'll be even more important for him to start with some sort of starting unit. Let's see the militiaman here. Put you over here, sir. We'll purchase that light leather jacket for you. And we'll send him to the Lizardman to see how strong that guard is. And with that done, let's end our turn and take Tira Sparkcaster's turn. Okay. Lots of forests around us this time. Let's do all... Oh, right. Oh, okay. So, first we have a starting shop. I can see that we at least have a sorcery store here. Let's count up what else we have for starting gems. So, I see 6. 6! And that's it! Nothing in any of the surrounding lands. That's not enough to run a mage. It really isn't, and that's a shame. Because I see a sorcery store here. Next, let's count the gold. 16, 26, 37, 41, 45, 48, 51. Commander will be tough. We have only a sorcery store here. There is no way to increase our gems there. I see no guaranteed extra gem income from any of the other lands. Oh. Well, that's a shame. That's a real shame. I do see redwood, so that's good to know it's there, but no iron. Okay. We can hopefully get more gems later, and we can get a wizard as our second, especially with the sorcery store there. A scout could be good as well with the sorcery store around for later. A scout could become a ranger and use the wand to help himself out with some wand mastery. A ranger can make a very good... a scout can make a very good ranger with a decent wand in his wand user, because his marksmanship upgrades will help him even with wands. But I see lots of forests around us, so I don't really want to hire a scout. I think a warrior to start, with an eye on a mage for second, will come in handy here. So, let's go ahead and start by building ourselves a forge. We'll hire that warrior. Hello, Bran. And you start with what I consider the most useless of the two weapon upgrades to start. Go ahead and leave the militiamen here. Take our slinger. We'll go ahead and purchase the equipment so I don't forget. Some simple chainmail. Now, I prefer the buckler over the wooden shield, especially given the amount of ranged attack forest that we have around here. We can use the forest to lower our ranged attack. So we'll go ahead and purchase a buckler. And the AI doesn't really want to attack your warrior no matter what, so I find the short spear to be almost useless most of the time. We'll vendor it and take a short sword instead. Now, he only has goblins here for a starting quest. We might as well take it and see what it does for us. And everyone, that sums up this video. So you've seen me give my advice, hopefully it was helpful. And you've seen me apply this advice to 3 different types of players, given what they start with. I hope it was helpful to you guys. In the next videos, we'll be actually the next video, we will begin covering combat. After that, we'll cover some other types of strategies, and we'll probably play maybe a few rounds of the Eador Genesis, where I can talk about what's going through my head as I make every decision that I am making. In any case, thank you guys for watching this one. I hope it was useful, and tune in for the next one in the series, which will cover combat. See you guys then, and thanks for watching.